All right, students, SAT students, welcome back for a final time before we get officially underway here with the SAT hype video, I guess. I think I forgot my Apple Pencil here for just a second, so hang tight, guys. It's a little embarrassing trying to get ready. Give me 1 sec, guys. I'll be right back. All right. You think I'd be better than that, huh? Welcome back, guys. Officially. So for those that have watched, for those that have tuned in, gotta get ready to go, right? There's a couple things that I want you guys to make sure that you do, okay? First, if you guys are watching, hello, Heroic, welcome. If you guys are watching the video, first, welcome. If you haven't been, now I'm out of breath trying to get my Apple Pencil ready so that you guys can see some of the stuff we want to talk about today. If you haven't been with us before, welcome. The point of today's video is to really try to reduce nerves so that you guys are ready to go for tomorrow. Again, we want to make sure that you guys feel as comfortable as possible so that when the test rolls around tomorrow, you guys are, just a second, guys. Now I'm out of breath. I should be better than this. Okay. So, yeah, we want to make sure that you guys are definitely ready to go for just everything that could come, especially really for today. We're not going to talk anything about concept review or anything along those lines. We really want to just try to get you guys to a point where it's like, you know what, I feel really good going in tomorrow, and that's really what we're shooting for. So while I catch my breath here, because I'm continuing to try, everybody who's watching, give me a thumbs up, because I'm an idiot and forgot my writing utensil for today. For those that missed that, forgot it, had to run, grab it, and now I'm getting too old, out of shape. But if you guys are here, can everybody just give me a thumbs up, and then we'll get going here with this hype video. Again, just trying to pump you guys up, get you guys ready to go, give a little pep talk. It shouldn't take too long. We're not going to answer any questions related to concept review, because generally speaking, that's probably not a good thing to cover right now. If you're reviewing something small or doing practice problems around something that doesn't typically give you a lot of stress, and by all means, we want you to do that, of course. But if you guys are if you're feeling overwhelmed with a concept, don't start to study it tonight, or it's just going to make you feel more overwhelmed. And there's probably only one question that comes up with that, right? For those that haven't, so it's a question about the StarU app. So with StarU, we put all of our content into StarU. 90% of it, 95% of it is available for free. The hardest concepts that come up in our book, that come up on the tutorial, that's $5 a month. That's the most you'll pay using StarU. I encourage you guys to use it. It's a pretty good resource. With Khan Academy, obviously there's a huge benefit to using Khan Academy. So this is not to replace that. It's just to give you guys some more practice problems. We do have all of the tests available. We actually have one additional test that Khan doesn't have, which is that April 2019 SAT. That's factored in. And so actually that's a good note to bring up. We just released, for those that saw this other video, we just released our brand new version of the app for StarU. Again, 90% of the content that all of our tutors write and edit, I guarantee it's the only content on the market besides maybe Khan Academy that is written and edited by current SAT and ACT tutors. So it's not to say that this is going to be better than that, but again, for those that want to have some more practice problems, it's pretty close. And I've worked for a lot of companies. I think what Khan Academy is doing is fantastic. So this isn't to replace that by any means. I think you can just use both, especially if you're running out of practice problems to do. I think these are pretty close. So let me show you guys what this looks like. And again, we do have one extra test that Khan doesn't have. So we're thrilled to be able to release this smart bubble sheet. Probably not useful for tomorrow, for those of you that are taking the Saturday test. But if you guys are taking a test beyond that, it is going to be Pretty cool. So give me 1 second here, and you guys will see this in the background of my screen. I encourage you guys to download it. It is free to download, and again, like 90% of the content. So if you guys take a look at this, the coolest new feature is if you guys, and this is the $4.99 a month, so I want to be upfront about that right away, but similar to Khan Academy, it's actually better for ACT students, just to be completely honest, because ACT doesn't have a Khan Academy. But if you guys look in the background here, if you click Smart Bubble Sheet on the app, and again, it's free to download, yes, and then you got it, go to SAT tests. And so again, the one test that we have that Khan doesn't, and you can click reading as an example. And if you click reading, you get the bubble sheet. So again, you can do this all on your phone as well. And if you guys start typing in your answers from the April 2019 test, right, you guys can find these online. It's on College Board. You guys can do it for all of the tests that are available on College Board. We'll go back here. You can proctor the test yourself. And then the coolest part is after you're done taking the exam, you get your results. You can track your results down here. So you can see all of the practice tests. I don't know if I've taken any yet. This was just released. No, guys, so everything that was free about the app that was free before is still free. We haven't changed anything about the free version of the app. That's all still there. We've just added the Smart Bubble Sheet. So that's all still free. So yeah, nothing's changed. We've just added this. And so the reason that this is beneficial, we think, to students is that after you take a practice test, if you come up here into SAT and ACT practice lessons, you guys will remember that before, all of the stuff, and I'll show you guys, all of the stuff that was available for free before is still available. This just gives you the opportunity to do suggested practice problems rather than having to do problems that, you know, that you're basically just self-studying. So that's okay, I'll just self-study. Yeah, the test is timed. I'll show you guys that again. But so for the question, yeah, for anybody who has questions about, this is still all free. So like verb tense, subject verb agreement, all that kind of stuff. It's still all free. It's right out of our tutorials. They're updated. Actually, the new version of the app is with our newest updated tutorial. Some people have been asking about when we would get that 2020 version out on Amazon. We're still working on that. But all of that content is available on the app. And that, again, that stuff that was free before is still free now. The only thing that's been added or changed is that Smart Bubble Sheet. So yeah, and then for the question about whether it's timed, yeah, you can go in if you click Smart Bubble Sheet, SAT, yes, and you want to take a test, whoops, SAT. Say you want to take test number 7. This is the real SAT test, test 7, right, that you can get on the College Board, got it. And then down here at the bottom, if you can either plug in your answers after you've taken the test, if you've written them on a paper form, but really we're trying to mirror what the computer-based testing is going to look like over the course of the next year. This is exactly what the format's going to be. Just on the computer-based, they can obviously put the actual questions on, but these correspond to question types. We've coded every question for those that have used our advanced score reports, the ones that are available for free on our website. We've just coded all of that into the app. So you can time yourself, right? You begin timer 24, right? 25 minutes for the no calc section. And then you time yourself as you're submitting your answers. You're looking at your own paper test, looking right, and then you fill out the answers on the bubble sheet. If you want to proctor it with the bubble sheet, you absolutely can. You can fill them out afterwards, but most importantly, as soon as you guys have filled out the test, it corresponds to the exact, it gives you the 10 question types that you missed most frequently on the test, all in all 4 sections. I'm sorry, the 15 question types. So it really helps you hone in on the exact question types that you need to review, rather than having that inefficient way of just continuing to do the same practice problems over and over. So anyway, again, that's not the point of the video, but I encourage you guys to check this out, or not the point of the live stream, but I encourage you guys to check it out. Everything that was available for free is still available for free. Nothing's changed on that note. We've just added this bubble sheet that for those that don't feel like they're as good about self-studying or knowing what to study, or if you don't want to plug in your answers to those free score reports on our website, basically what the bubble sheet does is it allows you to plug in your answers, and then it auto-generates based on the question types you've missed, just like the score report does. It auto-generates it, and then you guys just have suggested practice problems in the practice lesson section of the app, and it just continues to update based on the more tests you submit into the app. So again, we encourage you guys to check it out. I think certainly that the free stuff is still free, and the value of the Smart Bubble Sheet is something that only Khan Academy has right now. So I know you guys have probably used that. Again, like I said, it's probably a little bit more beneficial for ACT students because Khan does such a good job. If you want to take April 2019, that's the only one that they don't have available on the website, I think. But yeah, I encourage you guys to check it out, and especially if you're just looking for more practice problems. I think our practice problems are better than everybody else's. I know that, and again, that's not me just saying it. I've worked for a lot of the companies out there, right? You guys are familiar with Kaplan, and other than Khan Academy, nobody else is writing these practice problems and editing these practice problems from real tutors. That's just the facts. And again, I've worked for a lot of these companies. So Khan is unbelievable. It's an unbelievable thing that they're doing, and we're just trying to take a kind of a step in the same direction as they are. So anyway, I encourage you guys to download it. Download the free version if nothing else. But let's get into the hype part of this, okay? So first and foremost, guys, I want you guys to remember that when you wake up tomorrow, it is still just Saturday. That's the first thing that I want you guys to say. Can everybody give me a thumbs up on that note, that tomorrow is just Saturday again? I know there's a lot that goes into this test, but we talked a lot about yesterday in the comprehensive review. For those that had a chance to see that, we talked a lot about the meaning and the impact that thinking about the score in terms of answered questions rather than the mythological SAT score. If you think about it in terms of number of questions answered, it's really easy to just think about tomorrow as another Saturday and just be like, okay, I'm going to see how many questions I can answer correctly. Right? And we're going to talk about that today, trying to get you guys excited about the opportunity to continue to endure through the test, especially as you get more and more tired towards the end. It's going to feel like, man, I just want to get out of here. Especially when you get to those harder questions, it's going to feel it's going to be a little overwhelming, and we don't want that to happen. Okay, more than anything, if you think about this in terms of question numbers answered, right, rather than like, well, if I just give up now, I could still get a 1300. Who knows? I don't know. Maybe you could. But rather than think about that, you can think about, if I give up now, I still have 10 questions, and I'm not really focused on those 10, that's minus 100 points, guaranteed. And again, when you think about it in terms of the questions, like the number of questions you're answering, when you think about that, it's way, way easier to get way, way less stressed. Because instead of thinking, oh, I got to get this score, you think about this as a test, just like any other test you've ever taken that just happens to be graded in a different way than something you've taken before. But that doesn't mean that the question types aren't exactly the same. Okay, so can everybody give me a thumbs up in that regard? And when you do that, I'm going to switch over here, and we're going to talk about the SAT test number 8 scale. Okay, SAT test number 8 scale. We talked about it again yesterday, but let me post this for anybody that doesn't have it. SAT test 8 scale. Scoring. If you guys want to go down, I think it's the page 7 on this this PDF that I'm about to post. It's very, very important that SAT test 8 scoring. Let me show you guys here. Okay, so if you guys take a look at that scoring scale, this is, again, what we want you to remember more than anything else. This alone will get, in terms of what you can think about tonight and get ready to go for tomorrow, okay, if you guys want to get ready to go for tomorrow, by far, the thing that's going to impact your score the most is recognizing how the scoring works, okay, by far, because there's not a ton of concept review. There's not enough concept review you guys can do tonight, realistically, that's going to amount to 10 questions answered. But on a timed test like this, no matter how much preparation we have, when we get stressed, right, when we feel overwhelmed in any circumstance, in any situation, all of our natural tendencies, think about if you've ever run a mile, which I haven't clearly in a long time, for those that saw the beginning of this video, but if you've ever run a mile, if you're pushing yourself on that mile, or right, if you've ever run, it's really, really important, guys, that as you guys go through this, that if you that you need to continue to pick yourself up, right? You need to continue to move forward, and if you don't, it becomes a very, very, very problematic thing, right? Because that's when you start to fade. That's when you start to fade. Can everybody give me a thumbs up if that makes sense? Everybody give me a thumbs up if that makes sense. Give me one sec, guys. Okay, so can everybody again give me a thumbs up if that all makes sense? Sorry about that, guys. We had little technical difficulties here. Okay. So, again, we just want to continue to push forward. We want to continue to just try to make the best of our opportunity here. So when you guys look at this, if you look at page 7 on the scale, this is what you're going to see, right? And again, test 8 might be, let's say give or take 2 questions, because it's not always easy. It's not always easy to assess perfectly what that scale is going to look like. But let's take it by 2 questions, let's say. So on the math test, for those that are familiar, and again, we're not going to go through any concept review, question types. We're not going to do anything that's too difficult tonight, because it's not going to help you tomorrow. But what we can say is that here's the math section, right? You get 58 out of 58 questions, and you get a perfect score. But what you guys will notice, and this is a particularly hard math test, so it's not going to be like this every time. But like I said, let's call it plus or minus 2 questions for the scale. If you miss 2 questions here on SAT Test 8 Math, you still get an 800. So what I want to point out, guys, is on this test, if you have a hard test tomorrow, the ability to endure is infinitely better. So what I want you guys to think about is, if you get a hard test, that's the best thing that can happen to you. Especially if you know, for those that are watching this video, because you guys are putting in the hard work and the effort, for those that are watching this video, if you get a hard test, like if you're sitting in the math test and you're saying to yourself, man, this seems really hard, right? I'm not getting a lot of these questions right. You got to think, how do I find the easy questions? Because a hard test is going to push people to the limit way more than an easy test will. For those that are putting in a lot of hard work, you want the hardest test possible. Because those students that are putting in the hard work, that are listening to this thing about endurance and pushing forward, those are going to be the ones that in that moment of like, oh, I just don't want to do this, you push forward. And on a hard test, the scale is even more in your favor. So again, there's going to be a moment, if you get a hard reading section tomorrow, or if you get a hard math no calc section tomorrow, rather than thinking like, oh man, this is so hard, I'm not going to get the goal score that I wanted and I'm a failure, I want you guys to think, yeah, this is great. Because nobody else, I know the kid sitting next to me is not going to be wanting to push through this. And again, I told this on the comprehensive review yesterday. This is the biggest advantage that I had as a kid, is I wanted to beat the student sitting next to me. I didn't know the person. It was a random high school, just like you guys are going to. I didn't know the person, but I thought to myself, you know what, I can do this. I can beat this person. And who knew? That person probably beat me on a test, right? I had no idea. But when you get that mindset of like, I can push forward. If this is graded on a national scale, what do I need to do to keep enduring? And what will happen is you'll understand how this scaling really works. So let me give you an example. If you score a 650 on the math section, yeah, there's a huge curve on the test. There's always a huge curve on the test. Let me give you an example from a school test. Okay, so if you get 41 out of 58 math questions right, 41 out of 58, and this is why when we talked about yesterday, that PASS method, finding the easiest questions, I want to point this out. This is a hard math test, but again, let's say give or take 2 questions. 41 out of 58 in school, like if you were to answer that, that would be a D, I think, right? 41 divided by 58. That's a 71%. That's a C minus, right? In the American school system, that's a C minus. On this test, a 650 is in like the top, I'm going to say, I don't know for sure, but top 8%. I'd have to go look up the exact scale, but let's call it top 8. Or maybe, let's say better, top 12, just to be safe. You're in the top 12% of students. So 71%, if you're in the top 12%, you're getting an 88%. You get a 17% bump from everything that you've experienced in school. And again, this is where the hard test benefits those who understand what I'm talking about tonight, and who are watching, who are giving all of the effort. Because what feels like a 71% on a school test is actually a top 12 and 88% on the SAT. And that occurs, again, if somebody has the exact number for what a 650 is on the math section, it might be higher than a 12. It might be top 8. I might have been right the first time. But if anybody has that exact number, let me know. But you get a 17% bump from what you would experience in school. So what feels like you're doing poorly is actually doing extremely well. And this is the number one thing that if you understand the scales of this test, you have an ultimate advantage. And I know that because I told you guys yesterday, for those that were on the review, I was a horrible student. But the one thing that I knew how to do really well was find my minimum. What was the final grade that I had to get to keep a B minus, right? Or what was the final grade that I had to get in order to get to a C plus, or whatever, or in rare circumstances, get to an A, right? In those cases, I knew exactly what I needed to do. So when this came around and I knew what the content was on this test, I knew exactly what I needed to get a goal score. That didn't mean that I was ever shooting for a 1600, but that advantage to know that to get a 750 on the math section, I could miss 7 questions, right? And again, give or take 2. So let's say you could miss 5 questions on other tests. To get a 750, which is in the top 1%, 2% of all students that take this exam, to get a 750, I could just go around and skip 5 questions. On this hard math test, I could skip 7 and get a 750 plus score. So let's think about it from a 5, just to be careful. You can miss 5 questions and still get a top 1-2% score. And again, when you think about it like that, if you think about the scales and the scoring like that, and that, as annoying as it might be, I'm sure some of you guys find my voice annoying, and that's okay, because the annoying voice is just like annoying songs stick in your head. And if you guys are sitting there thinking like, okay, Chase told me to keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, then when you get there, when you get to that point of exhaustion, when you just want to give up, you're like, all right, every question I give up on now is minus 10 points. That's how I've got to think about this. So if I still have 17 questions left on the math with the calculator, section 4, if I have 17 left and I start to feel myself fading or thinking about other things or thinking about my score and how poorly I did on the reading section, all that, if I have 17 questions left and I'm not totally focused, that's minus 170 points right off the top. You can guarantee that because the SAT is almost perfect with plus 10 per question. Right? It varies slightly, but let's call it plus 10 per question. If you start to fade or you get into that moment on the reading section, can we all agree? Can everybody give me 2 thumbs up that the reading section is really hard? We talked about this yesterday. Reading stinks. It's really dense passages. You got to be really focused for an hour, over an hour of just really dense reading. If you come out of the reading section being like, oh, I did so badly, I'm just such a failure, blah, 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 right? Then, yeah, you're already defeated. Then you have 3 other sections that make up 3/4 of the test that you're already defeated for because you let the reading test get to you. Rather than thinking like that, all we want to be is, okay, how do I find the questions, right? If you knew this scale, and you should because this is true, let's say anywhere from 41 to 44 questions, depending on the test. Let's see, anywhere from 41 to 44 questions gets you a 650 on the math section, 41 through 44. Going back to what we talked about on that 3-pass method yesterday, it's really easy to figure out how to get to a 650, right? Instead of thinking of this as like, oh, I did so badly on reading and I'm going to fail this. You don't know at that point. You don't know what the scale is going to be. You don't know how hard the reading test was, how much the person next to you struggled. You have no idea at that moment, so there's no reason to worry about it at that moment. Instead, with that 3-pass thing that we talked about, you start thinking like, okay, 650, I have to get 44 questions right, and that's to be careful, right? In some cases, I can even get 41 right. If I get 44 questions right, it's pretty easy how you want to just go find the 44 that you know how to do and ignore the other 14 questions completely. Now, we always get students that say, well, what happens if I miss questions? Well, then I'll say, well, what's your goal score on the math section? They'll say, well, it's a 750. Like, if you miss questions, if you're trying to get a 750 on the math test, you got to get a lot of questions right. So if you're worried about not being accurate on a 700's worth of questions, then why are we talking about a 750? Right? You want to set a floor score. We talked about this. Think about this today. Think about this tonight, because this idea will impact your score tomorrow more than any concept review ever could tonight, because there's just not enough time. But if you think about this and you think about your goal score, where have you been practice testing? Take the average of the last 3 practice tests. Whatever you want to do, let's say you want to get a 650. Then your goal on the math test tomorrow should be to answer 44 out of 58 questions very, very accurately, and you should get a 650. The other 14, great. If you want to guess on those, if you get time at the end because you guaranteed already that you got a 44, that's awesome. That happens all the time, right? You just have a great test day, and instead of hitting your average, you go way above your average. That happens to people all the time. But rather than going in with the mindset that you have to hit that way big score, you say, okay, let me hit my average score, and if I come around and I'm like, man, we've seen this from students. We had a student recently, and again, this was on the ACT, but I talked about student Rachel. We had a student on the ACT test. He could never finish the reading section. On the reading section on the ACT, it's difficult to finish timing-wise, if you guys have seen that. He could never finish, so we set the goal that he was going to answer 30 out of 40 questions right. Okay, he was going to answer 30 out of 4 on the 8, and again, this is the ACT reading, but the same thing applies to this one. Okay, because the tests are largely similar. He was going to get 30 out of 40. He was going to be 100% accurate. And on all of his practice tests leading into the real exam, he had gotten 30 out of 40 right. He was perfectly accurate. He guessed the same letter down, and he was getting like 33 out of 40 by guessing the same letter down. Well, it turns out on test day, he was a little bit more focused. He was not stressed at all. And he told me after the test, he got 30 out of 40 right, and he still had 7.5 minutes left. He had never had time left going into the last section of the reading. There's 4 passages, 4 passages with 10 questions each. He had never had enough time. On the real test day, he had 7:30 left because he was locked in and he wasn't stressed. Lo and behold, he had been focused on accuracy so much that he was so in tune with how to read and how to answer these questions. He ended up getting 40 out of 40. He had never gotten above a 31 on the ACT reading test, and he got a 36 on test day. And it was only because his expectation wasn't through the roof. He wasn't worried. When you set your expectation at, I got to get 55 out of 58 math questions right, and then you struggle early on in the math section, on the no calc section, right off the bat, you're like, I've failed. I'm such a failure. If you think about it as, I got to get a 650 and I can miss 15 questions, I can omit 15 questions and be fine, all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, that's easy. I just have to do better on the calculator section. This is the single most important thing that you guys can realize going into tomorrow's exam. If you're taking the August test tomorrow, this is the single most important thing, because again, if you have the positive mindset, if you go into it stress-free with a reasonable goal score for tomorrow, your goal score will shoot through the roof, because when you go in with an average score, right? If you go in, I'm not an average score, if you go in with your average score, let's say again that it was at 650, well, you don't take into account, because you guys are 16, 17, 18 years old, which is fair, right? A lot of times you don't take into account that the last time you took 3 tests in a row, your sister was screaming at your mom in the background. That doesn't really do much for being really focused. So if you set the expectation as to what you were doing in your practice tests at home, all of a sudden when you're really focused on exam day, but you don't have these crazy expectations, all of a sudden, oh man, I'm really intense and focused on this. Now you get 10 more questions right, and now you're at a 750. We've seen it happen so often, and it has nothing to do with me being a great teacher or with the students. I mean, you saw this. The student that got a 36 on the reading test of the ACT wasn't a reading genius. He just went in without stress and anxiety, knowing what he was trying to accomplish, and that's all she wrote, right? If you go in tomorrow and you're looking to get a 700, look on recent math tests that you've taken and say to yourself, okay, in order to get the 700, I got to answer, and this is only if the 700 has been your average. Don't set higher expectation than what your average has been, because then when you exceed that average, you're like, man, this is great. If you get a 40, let's say 47 to 48 questions right, you end up with somewhere around a 700 on the math section. That gives you 10 to 11 questions that you can skip and never worry about. And again, that will help you so much, particularly on math, because they're the last 2 sections. It will help you so much keep that positive momentum. It will keep you driving forward. And on the reading test, same thing, because the reading test is so dense. Rather than just being like, doing that thing, who's ever done this before, where you're reading with your finger and you like look out into space and you get to the bottom of the page and you have no idea what you just read? That's exactly what we need to avoid on a timed reading test. We have to be really focused. So on the reading section, if that's something you guys struggle with, let me give you a really helpful hint on reading for tomorrow that can be immediately implemented. Let's say on the reading test, you find yourself fading as you get through it, and a lot of students do. We have a student recently in one of our programs who would just get 1 wrong on the first 2 passages and then get 15 wrong on the next 3, and she kept saying that it was just because she kept losing focus. Well, what we had her do was after the first 2 passages, okay, yeah, so on recent tests, well, this is test number 8, guys, so I disagree on that one. But -10, test number 8 is a real test administered within the last 2 years of the SAT, so it doesn't mean that it's -10 every time, but I think that on the, what was it, April 2019 test was like -8, I think. Whatever they are, I think that you can say that it's anywhere from -6 to -10 then. If you want to be really, really conservative, then say -6 on the math test, but again, you can set your expectations, then set it at 8. Whatever it is, you want to set your expectations kind of in the average so that you can continue to improve your score. On the reading test, same thing. So if you get through the first 2 passages and you find yourself fading, or if anybody has ever read those 2 difficult, that 1904 passage, curve is not, so the curve is, guys, the curve isn't predictable, but it's -6 questions is predictable. Like, it's going to be somewhere in the -6 range. Okay, because -4, for example, could have been a 710, and -7 could have been a 700. Right? It could have been 710, 710, 700, 700. You want the hardest math test possible, and that's, again, for those that are going to move on and find the easy questions and be comfortable with what a 700 gives, you're going to get a 750. I can guarantee it. Same thing with the reading test. If you guys get 2 passages, and after 2 passages you find yourself fading, take a deep breath. I'm not kidding. Take a break for 1 minute. If you look at your old tests and you've analyzed them thoroughly, and you look at your reading section and you notice that you're missing a lot more questions on the last 3 passages than you are on the first 2, take a break for 1 minute mid-test. That seems so counterintuitive, but let me point this out. Or even 2 minutes. Take a drink of water, right? Do whatever you need to do. Okay, yes. So Mahesh, that's exactly right. So if you feel like those historical passages are making you lose confidence, maybe do those at the end. Or after the first 2 passages, or the first 3, because that historical one tends to be maybe number 4, take a deep breath. And I'm not kidding you, 2 minutes of just like break. Like you're taking a drink of water, you're just kind of looking around, you're regrouping, and then you say to yourself, okay, I got to get back into this. Because remember, if you take a 2-minute break, you probably leave yourself with like 2 questions to guess on at the end. But if it means that if you miss those 2 at the end because you have to guess, but you're that much more focused on those other 3 passages, boy, is that a huge trade-off. If you can guarantee that I'm going to miss 2 at the end, I'm going to have to guess on those because I took this 2-minute break. But that 2-minute break allows you to regroup and stay way more focused for a 1900s passage that nobody wants to read. You'd be amazed at how few simple mistakes you make on the last 3 passages. And again, sacrificing 2 questions that can be guaranteed guesses at the end in order to stay focused on these 3 is amazingly helpful. Okay, it's amazingly helpful. So don't be afraid to do that. Okay, don't be afraid to do that. And again, does that work if you're trying to get 52 out of 52? No. Does it work if you're trying to get 50 out of 52? Absolutely 100% of the time. And that's where you have to be really, really honest and just say like, okay, do I need to get 52 out of 52? Would it be great? Yes. If it happens, that's great. And I'm not saying take a nap if you get through the full 50 questions and you still have time left. But just be okay taking a break and taking a deep breath if it means that it's going to allow you to re-engage with the test. I'm thoroughly convinced, and then I'll answer some questions here at the end, but I am thoroughly convinced fiction passages are my worst passages, so unfortunately I don't have too many tips for that. My recommendation is that if you struggle with the fiction passages, same with me, is be okay spending more time on those. So like I said this yesterday in our comprehensive review, that I'll take 11 minutes for the fiction passage. 14 minutes. 14 minutes for the fiction passages, which is over time. But because I really like the historical passages, that's just me, and I really like some of the science passages, I know that I can make up that time. So I just would say that if you're struggling with the fiction passages, do kind of what I do, which is spend more time on those, knowing that you'll make up time later, which is the first one. Yeah, they're my hardest. So guys, for those that are commenting that fiction is the hardest for you, I feel the same way. It's just hard to stay focused and really be into whatever they're talking about. So I would do one of 2 things. Again, just what I described, be okay taking more time to make sure that you really understand the passage, or save the fiction one to the end, right? It's really easy to just flip your page to passage number 2, get all that momentum going, and then if you struggle at the end, you already knew that was going to be your hardest passage. So you're like, if you have to guess on some of those, you're struggling with those a little bit, at least you got 41, 42 questions right on the first 4 passages before you ever started thinking about the difficult ones. So those would be the 2 really easy strategies that you could try to implement tomorrow. Yeah, so if you finish any section with a good amount of time left, my recommendation would be to go find, if you're going to answer all the questions quickly, make sure that you circle ones that you struggled with, okay, so that you can always go back. The reason that it's hard to finish with time left is because I know 16-year-olds, I know myself at least, and my natural inclination when I was done with any test was just be like, whatever, I'm done. Even if I circled questions to come back to, I'd just be like, nope, not doing that today. Right, and I just move on. And so that's when you guys have to think to yourselves, okay, what do I need to do to really go back and really actually re-answer those if you have time left at the end? Because that, again, it's hard to push through that mental barrier. I get it. Yeah, grind test, right? You got to grind test. The grinding aspect of this, I told you, for those that watched the live stream yesterday, I said that I really believe that the SAT is, because otherwise they would just test you on AP Calc concepts. If they really wanted to get high level on the math section or high level in the English, they just give you harder problems to do. So I'm convinced that 50% of this test is concepts, right? And 50% is psychological, right? Where you're just, and again, the biggest advantage I had over most students when I was your age was nothing to do with work ethic, and I regret it to this day. I wish I was a harder worker when I was a kid, and I'm playing catch up now, and I don't want you guys to have to do that. Okay, psychologically though, I wanted it. I really, on test day, I wanted to do as well as I could, so I kept pushing through that. And again, if you guys are able to do that, that's going to earn you probably an extra 100 points just because you're not giving up when somebody else is. I couldn't agree more. Mahesh said it perfectly. I could not agree more that there's nothing to replace hard work, right? I would give anything to be some of you guys are already naturally good test takers and really hard workers, and that's how you go to Harvard. I was never going to be the Harvard student because I never had a work ethic until I was like 23, 24 years old. For those that are realizing that you need to work hard when you're 15, 16, 17 years old, if you have that mindset already, and we can make you a good test taker, or you can become a good test taker. When you combine those two things, that's when the sky's the limit and you don't have to play catch up, right? That's a huge, huge point of emphasis. And if you guys remember that, keep pushing tomorrow. Keep working hard. Do everything you can. It's going to be a huge day for many of you. You're going to exceed your score, not because of anything other than you just wanted it more than the student sitting next to you. So again, go into night, set your expectations at a certain level. Don't feel overwhelmed by any means. Set your expectations. And then the final thing that I want to bring up is we do have a video. Just again, many of you guys know this already. I'm going to post this video real quick. It's just a video of the 5 things that have ready to go. 5 things that have ready to go before tomorrow's exam. And again, some of you guys know this. Don't feel obligated to watch this. But again, it's just the 5 things that you want to have ready to go the night before. So going off this don't be stressed idea, we don't want you guys to obviously be stressed. So having these items ready to go the night before the test is huge. It allows you to you wake up in the morning if you have your ID. So I'm going to post this link. It just has it's the list of things you want to have ready to go. SAT items to have ready the night before. Okay, and then the final thing that I recommend you guys doing, and this is, again, the app is still free. StarU is still free for a lot of the content. If you guys want to use Khan Academy's app, that's great too. Whatever it is, if you guys want to use a real practice passage tomorrow morning, whatever it is, I highly, highly recommend that when you wake up tomorrow, if you're taking the test tomorrow or any time in the future, that you wake up and you do some practice problems. It's like anything else that you guys do in your lives. Do some practice problems. If you play a sport, you don't just show up at the time of the game and it's like, okay, I guess we're doing this today. So don't do that for the SAT. And that's way more important than any single game of high school sports that you'll ever play. Yet we always show up 30 minutes to an hour if you're in the play, right? You show up an hour before to do voice warm-ups, to stretch, do whatever you need to do to get ready for the play. Whatever it is you guys do, you know you warm up. Yet we've seen so many students not warm up before the SAT, which is infinitely more important than anything really anything else besides maybe grades that revolves around your future life after high school. So make sure that you get up 20 minutes early, 30 minutes early, and make sure you're doing some practice problems. When you're standing in line to register, rather than talking to your friend about, oh, we're going to fail this today, or whatever, or talking about goal scores, we've already talked about how thinking about it in terms of scoring is not the way to go. Think about it as what's your goal number of questions answered, and then do a few warm-up problems. The app is available. You can do it on your phone. The Khan Academy app is available. If you want to stand in line with a real practice test, do that. But do practice problems while you're standing in line just to register for the exam so that you're not getting into that whole mindset of I'm going to fail and talking to your friends and all that kind of stuff. That's ultimately not going to help you when you get to the reading test. So again, do some warm-up problems. Get ready to go. If you want to use StarU, if you want to use Khan, if you want to have a practice test, I don't care. Whatever it is, just make sure you wake up 15, 20 minutes early and start doing some practice problems so that the moment you see the first reading question that's real, that's not the first reading question that you've done of the day or not the first grammar question, whatever it is you want to warm up with. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. Anybody have any questions, guys? I don't want to get it too far into. If you guys have general questions, that's great. But again, it's kind of it is what it is at this point, right? You guys have put in the hard work. It's just Saturday. You wake up. I don't know what time you guys are taking the test. I know it's different for international students, but you wake up tomorrow and it's just another Saturday, right? The sun's still going to be shining for the most part, right? You get out of the test at 12:30. Go hang out with your friends. Don't think about the SAT again if you don't want to. If you do, go look up the scale or go on Reddit, right, and start looking at what the scale could possibly be. If that's it, take a nap, do whatever it is. But remember that at 12:30, You're the same person, right? You wake up, you do the same thing. It doesn't mean that you don't work hard. I hate it when people would patronize me as a kid, being like, "Oh, it's just all fun." Well, it's like at the same time, it's fun to do well, and so it just isn't fun to overthink it and overstress about it before and after. So when you get into the moment, be ready to go, be ready to compete, be ready to focus for that long time, and then when you're done, do whatever it is that you feel comfortable doing, but don't stress about it anymore. It's over. It's the best you could do, right? And whatever it takes away your anxiety, take a nap, go hang out with your friends, whatever, but just be in the moment when you're taking the test and then forget about it after, because it's just another Saturday and you guys are good to go. You got to build up that positivity, Mash. That's exactly right. The more positivity you have the night or the 2 nights before the test, the better you're going to do every time. Because instead of thinking about all the bad things that could happen or what your goal score is, you're just thinking, let's go. Let's answer a few questions correctly, right? Because that's going to take care of the score. More questions answered correctly is going to take care of the score. So find the easy ones. Go find the easiest passage on reading. Go find an easy question on math to get you back into the rhythm, to get you guys going again. Because when we toil away with one math question for 4 minutes, the next one that should be easy looks a lot harder. We don't want that. Find the easy ones first. Get those done. If you find yourself in a rut where you're just like, I'm done with this, go find an easy question to start building that momentum back up, and it's a huge, huge positive. You got this. Okay, you guys got this. Strategy for word problems that are difficult, vocabulary problems in the reading section, it's tough. There's not, at least in this short amount of time, we definitely have ways that you can improve the vocab section in terms of reading in context, looking at things like tone of the passage, and trying to identify what might be a positive tone passage would be identified with a positive tone word for vocab. But ultimately at this point, I wouldn't worry too much about any single question type. And if you know you've been, more so than anything, guys, if you've been struggling with vocab on practice tests, go into it thinking, well, you know what, I probably shouldn't do this vocab word, right, or vocab question. I don't need to worry about that when that one question is worth the same as the other 51 questions, or those 5 vocab questions are worth the same as the other 47 questions. Knock those other 47 out, and then the great thing about the vocab questions, if you're struggling on them, even if you skip them on the entire passage, like if you just don't do them, and you move on and you get to the end, if you don't come back, great. If you do, you can always come back, and those are the types of questions that you don't need any real context or time to answer those. So, leaving those blank and moving on, if you really struggle with the vocab questions, is a great way to do it. Yeah, so going back to, in terms of the curve tomorrow, I have no idea. I think it was Mahesh that said this, like -6 could be a math curve that gets you a 700. We just saw it on this one, -11 was a math curve. I said give or take 2 questions, so that's kind of the split that I was talking about, is like, 6 to 11 is 5, and give or take 2 is 2 one way, 2 the other, so that's 4 questions. I would say look at other scales of practice tests that you've seen before, and then, the scale could be either anywhere from 2 more of that or 2 less of that, and that's how I would probably think about the scale. But it's not, it's not something to worry about. It's not something to speculate about, because you can't control it anyway. You just got to remember that if it's a hard test, you got to be thinking, yeah, this is great. Even if I don't answer as many questions as I'm normally used to answering, this is going to be great because I know the scale is taking care of me. The 3 pass, guys. 3 pass doesn't. So guys, 3 pass is again kind of with this 3 pass. You can definitely use it on the math if you guys aren't familiar with that. If you guys are thinking about that, -1,800. Sorry, let me just real quick answer the 3 pass thing. 3 pass definitely applies to math, right? Very easily. For those that are going to be math majors or if you're into computer science right now, I was for a while when I was in high school. It was like one of the only things I was decent at as a student. But this is based on our 3 pass method. If you guys want to go watch the comprehensive review from yesterday, our 3 pass method is based on the sorting algorithm in math, and then it's used in computer science. Okay, so if you have 4 boxes, for those that are unfamiliar, if you have 4 boxes, even if this is, so the one thing that gets everybody thrown off here is even if this is listed as 1, 2, 3, 4, and the SAT says that the test is in order of difficulty, that's not true necessarily for you. Because if you just covered a graphs of functions question that's number 14 on the SAT no calc section, but you just did it in Algebra 2 or pre-calc class, suddenly that's like a really, really easy question for you because you just did it. You just talked about roots and all that kind of stuff, right? Non-real roots. And so if that's the case, we need to make sure that we see that question on the test. So what the sorting algorithm says and what this pass method is based on, you guys can believe it, it's the SAT actually has some, right? Rather than jumping boxes like this, if these are the question difficulty, sorting method goes through all the boxes and it just sets the easiest question up first, right? And by the end of it, you have boxes that look like this, where you're just jumping from one box to the other. And it's a lot easier to do a warm-up problem when the question is really easy, or 5 questions in a row that are warm-up problems, right? If the questions are easy, even if they show up later in the math no calc section. The biggest misconception of this is that the math no calc section means that every question is in order of difficulty. It isn't. Now, generally speaking, are the first 5 easier than the last, 1 through 5 easier than 11 through 15? Yes, absolutely. But that doesn't mean that you can't find a really easy question for you specifically because of your own general knowledge on math somewhere in 11 through 15. And there's no point in toiling away with a really difficult word problem at number 7 when number 15 is a graphs of functions question that takes you 2 seconds to answer if you know the graphs of functions concepts, or a trig problem, or whatever it is. Okay, so that's a really, really important thing. On the reading section, it applies if you know your worst passage on the reading section. On the reading section, it applies really well because if you know your worst passage, it kind of is like the 3-pass method. You just leave the last passage or your worst passage till the end, and you do that one last. You just skip over it. It's pretty easy to do. And we always get students that are like, well, I don't like to skip over questions in my bubble sheet. And I'm like, the best test takers in the world, because objectively, and I only try to make objective statements here, right? I don't want to make subjective statements where, like, yeah, there are multiple ways to take the reading test. There are multiple ways. So I get it. You guys do the strategy that works best for you. If you continue to practice and you figured out which one works best for you, that's totally fine. But objectively speaking, the best test takers in the world, Bill Gates, got a perfect score on the SAT and coincidentally is a computer science major, would look to sort these problems into the easiest ones for him. And so even if you have to leave 11 questions blank on your bubble sheet because that's the passage you're skipping, you just find a way to remain focused and maybe draw a line where you're going to restart bubbling, right? For the new passage, you look at, okay, there's 38, there's question 42, draw a line just above 42 so that you know that's where you're bubbling so you don't bubble in the wrong answer choice. Okay, does that make sense? Is that cool, guys? All right, so any other questions? I want to leave it there. Again, I don't want to overwhelm you guys. If you guys have any questions for us, we made a comment yesterday on the comprehensive review video. Try to comment below that video if you have questions, just so we can try to keep it all in one place. So comprehensive review, it's on the channel. If you guys have any other questions for us, please make sure you comment there. Otherwise, guys, if you're taking the test tomorrow, good luck. We will be doing these videos, these live streams before every official SAT exam. So if you're worried you're going to forget everything you just learned today or thought about today, it's going to be there for the September 26th test. We're going to be there for all of the official August SAT exams. For all of the official Saturday SAT exams. We'll have these live streams for you guys. So just, keep working hard. You guys are doing great. Keep up the hard work. And if you guys have any questions for us tonight, just general or more specific questions even, just comment below that comprehensive review video, and one of our teachers or teaching assistants will get to it tonight. All right, guys, you guys are going to crush it. Keep it up. Keep up the positive momentum. I'm looking forward to hearing how you guys do. We always love to hear if you guys do well, especially if you guys do well. If you guys do poorly, keep it away from me. No, I'm just kidding. But if you guys do well, we'd love to hear about it. And we'd love to know how you guys do. And guys, I just know you're going to crush it. Remember that tomorrow's just Saturday. You're going to go take a test for 3.5 hours, and after you're done, it's just another day. All right? Sun's still up, world's still turning, and it is what it is. All right? You guys are ready to go. Crush it tomorrow. If you have any questions for us, let us know. Otherwise, have a great rest of your Friday. Get ready for the test on Saturday if you're taking it, and good luck, guys. Hope you guys have a great rest of your night.